inside scoop on an interesting question that has been handed down throughout history but yet to be decided on. Should John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and Cornelius Vanderbilt best be remembered as clever entrepreneurs or unethical robber barons? Now, Mr. Rockefeller, what are you known for in history?
My charm, my wits, and of course, my smashing good looks.
What contributions have you made to American society that were important during your time and are still relevant to today?
Well, I was commonly referred to as the richest man in history. This came about from realizing the important role that oil would play in America. I invested the majority of my money into petroleum, and by the time others got with the program and saw what kind of value oil had, I had control over a large amount of this natural resource.
Yes, many would agree that you had an overwhelming amount of control over the oil industry. Some would go as far as to say you held a monopoly on the industry.
I did not place this silly board game on my industry. I used my brains and my American freedom to build my life from a simple entrepreneur to a very successful businessman.
In your file, it says the Supreme Court ruled that your company, Standard Oil, was in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which forbids companies from conspiring to force out competitors. You had a secret service for locating competitor shipments and persuading the independent oil dealer to cancel the orders. If they didn't, you would sell at cost to destroy your opponents.
I did no such thing. Besides, big industry is survival of the fittest kind of world, so I hurt a few small companies along the way. I have done more than enough good in my business life to make up for that.
And what have you done to contribute to American society?
My company standardized a high level of quality for oil. The Standard Oil Company reduced waste and created room for many more economies. It removed sulfur from crude oil during the refining process. A few byproducts that came from such processes were kerosene, gas oil, and lubricating oil. These made room for more industries like those that improved lubricants such as petroleum jelly. And even though my company's oil was a higher standard, it was still made more affordable for the common people.
Well, Mr. Rockefeller, you accumulated all this wealth even after the Supreme Court had your company split up. What did you do with it all?
I donated large sums of money to charity. I founded Spelman College. I contributed to the University of Chicago and Johns Hopkins University. Throughout my life, I would estimate that I donated more than $500 million to charity.
Thank you, Mr. Rockefeller. That's all we needed. Could you please call Mr. Carnegie in when you head out?
My pleasure.
Tell us about your contributions to American society.
You mean like my efforts and my intelligence?
Yes, but more specifically, what industry did you work in, and how did your work in that industry contribute to American society?
Well, I worked in the steel industry because I knew that it offered a lot of wealth. So I sought out a way to make making steel more affordable. And I did. I was obsessed with efficiency. And because of that, my company became #1 in the world for steel production. I installed an open hearth furnace system that made my steel higher quality than most. My steel was used in making skyscrapers as well as for making armor plates for the U.S. Navy. As production grew for my company, I added improved systems of material handling, which made it so that in the rapid growth of the labor force, being a skilled worker was less necessary.
My sources say that you hired detectives that killed some strikers at one of your factories.
I simply hired detectives to take care of the operations at that plant. I was in favor of labor unions, and I condemned the use of strike breakers because no steel mill is worth even a single drop of blood. I was out of the country at the time of this unfortunate event, and I had no control over the situation.
Fair enough. One final question before we switch over to Vanderbilt. What did you do with all the wealth that you accumulated over the years?
Well, I was a man who was committed to education, so I funded the Tuskegee and Carnegie Institutes. I've always loved books, so I donated funds that led to the building of over 3,000 public libraries in America and Scotland. Even after I died, charitable contributions from my estate provided funds for worthy causes. I was responsible for more than $4.3 billion in charitable contributions.
I suppose that makes you one of the greatest philanthropists in history. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Cornelius Vanderbilt. Could you tell me what contributions you made to American society and what industry it was in?
I could.
Are you going to?
Did you want me to?
Yes, please.
Well, to tell you my contributions, I think it would be best to start from the beginning. I worked on the ferry boats with my father in his company. By the time I was 16, I had decided that I wanted my own ferry service. With a loan from and a ferry from my parents, I began my company by ferrying freight and passengers between Staten Island and Manhattan. I, being young, had such energy about me that captains of nearby boats often called me the Commodore in jest.
So, were you in the ferry business throughout your life?
Oh no, just the beginning really. I dabbled in a few areas of business, steamships, some law, real estate, but I believe what most people know me for is my business with the railroads. Before the Civil War, I owned a railroad here and there, but most of my efforts had been put on steamships, especially during the time of the gold rush, going through Nicaragua and then later Panama. However, during the Civil War, I donated and sold a few ships to the U.S. Navy. Much of the money from that went to buying railroad stocks after the war. I sold the last of my ships in 1864, and concentrated on the railroads. I united railroads and eventually became one of the first giant corporations in American industry.
How many companies did you put out of business throughout your life?
I'll be honest, quite a few. Some were companies that were holding a monopoly, and that wasn't okay with me. So I overturned those monopolies. Others were people who took my rights and steamboats for themselves, and I used negotiations in order to retain my properties that neither the U.S. or English governments would help to restore.
So what you're saying is that all the companies you took down, it was because you had a reason for them, not simply, as some people would think, because you were ruthless?
Yes, but for the companies I took down or bought out, many more took their places. The railroads helped commerce to grow all across the nation.
One last question before you go. What charitable contributions did you make during your life with all your wealth?
Well, during the Civil War, I gave my most prized ship, the Vanderbilt, to the U.S. in fighting the war. I offered it to the U.S. twice. The first time in 1861, and they refused. However, in 1862, they had decided that they did need the help of my ship. So I had it repaired and fitted for battle. Then, after the South lost, I founded Vanderbilt University in Nashville in order to help the South recover after the war. My son also donated considerable amounts even after I was gone.
Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Vanderbilt. From the information that we've been given by these men today, I would like to give my take on the question, should these men be remembered as clever entrepreneurs or unethical robber barons? These men weren't the perfect philanthropists, but that's not what we want to know. I believe they were very clever, using their situations and their experience to make extremely profitable companies that opened up more opportunities for the public as well as for themselves. They should best be remembered as captains of industry. After all, who did more in their industries